Yeah, really. And if I know Crawford County is 40 plus miles away, but if the kids could come up to the little school, I'd see to it that they had a full viewing of the school, the history of the school, and that sort of thing.
All right. Well, that's great to know. I'll
Yeah.
pass that along. Careful what you offer.
Well, I know, but that's fine. Last month, a little over a month ago, all the Southern Indiana superintendents, broken into two groups, came to the school. There were about 60 of them all together, 30 and 30. They
Amazing.
wanted to know they wanted to know about the history of the school. There were superintendents from Perry County, Spencer County, all over Southern Indiana, and they really enjoyed it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So that they were
Oh,
there in two groups. Is that what it was? Two different days or
yeah. One in the morning. They also went to the Underground Railroad Church, and they made a day. They visited about three historic sites in New Albany.
okay. Super. Hi, Uncle John.
How you doing?
I'm doing
Hey,
just
John.
fine. How are you
Hello,
doing?
John.
There comes Brother Mike.
Granddad. Are you sleeping, Granddad? No, your eyes are open. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Can you see me now?
I can see you now.
Hi, how are you?
Huh?
How are you?
Okay, nothing hurts.
Well, Victor Meganity is on.
Victor
Hello,
Megenity.
Mike.
Can you, can you?
That's him. Yeah,
Yeah, there he is.
Victor
Hello, Mike.
Megenity.
Good seeing you, Michael.
Yeah,
Michael Pale.
yeah,
Michael Pale. That's right.
yeah. That's right.
And let's see. See, I should be more proactive about doing these spotlights because I think it probably helps. And there's
There's Melvin.
Melvin
Hello,
Beasley.
Melvin.
Oh,
You see Melvin, Granddad? Granddad,
What?
do you see Melvin Beasley?
Is that him?
Yep.
Huh?
Yeah, that's Melvin.
On the screen?
it depends on your view. Not everybody can see everybody.
I,
Yeah.
I just spotlighted you, so it should
Oh,
be
okay. Okay.
everyone should be looking at you.
That's okay. Yeah, I can see. I understand now.
All right, let me take that. Get rid of that spotlight.
I was telling Jeremy that we hosted at Division Street School in New Albany, we hosted most of the superintendents from Southern Indiana, arranged by the New Albany superintendent. And half of them, about 30 of them came in the morning, 30 in the afternoon about a month ago. And one of them was from Tazewell. I don't know whether you remember
Oh,
uh, Mark Eastridge, Howard Eastridge's son. Now, there's two Howard Eastridges from Crawford County, one in English and one in Tazewell. This is the Tazewell Howard Eastridge. But he was also my student teacher many years ago.
That's neat.
Yeah. Melvin, how's the weather out in Northern California?
no, we're not in. I'm in Southern California, so
Oh,
it's
yeah,
right now
California.
today. It's fine. It's 50 or 60 degrees or something like that, and nothing happening. And that's good news when there's nothing happening here.
Maybe we want you to
Good
report on
news.
the weather in Northern California, though.
Yeah, I'm sure it's raining up
Yeah.
north. We're supposed to get
You're in the
more
are
rain
you in the
next week.
earthquake? Are you in the earthquake zone, Melvin?
Oh yes, we've been through two of them actually.
Woo.
It's a little frightening. It's sudden, and there's no predicting it or getting ready for it. But at least you're not. Well, I don't know. We get by it, and everything. Of course, most recently in Los Angeles, we had the fires.
Oh
So
boy.
I'm sure you saw
Sure.
that on the news.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we, yeah, obviously that was big news here. My wife and I were not impacted by it directly. We were on evacuation watch at one point, but we never actually had to evacuate, and we
Oh
never
boy.
lost power or anything. And one of the things they do out here is the power company preemptively turns off the power in certain areas so that the power lines don't short out and cause new fires when there's a real high wind. So my son lives about 40 some miles north of here along the coast, and they weren't in any fire damage, but they got they had power. They lost power 2 or 3 times during the time of the fires because the power company was preemptively turning it off. So the power lines that ran across the mountains and the valleys didn't short out and start another fire.
That's what happened to friends of mine in Eagle Rock, and of course the smoke was really bad there.
Yeah.
A guy who was in my graduating high school class in DC, who lives in Altadena, his house was completely destroyed, burned to
Wow.
the ground. But that other friend in Eagle Rock, I was talking with her the other day, and I said, fires, floods, and fault lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's trying to get me to move to Los Angeles. Of course, I have a cousin and her toddler who want me out there too, but the weather and the conditions haven't been very inviting. Mudslides.
Well, you don't have to worry about the floods very much. I mean, after all, English got flooded.
That's right. That's for
So,
sure.
and people used to talk about the 1937 flood when I was young. There, the Ohio River flood. So there's something any place. I know that I read an article years ago about somebody that lived through one of the earthquakes here, and they moved. They got out of California and moved back to Mississippi, and they ended up in the a floodplain of the Pearl River, and you can guess what happened.
Yeah.
They
Oh
got
boy.
flooded out. So,
I
You know,
can you see that?
oh, look at that. Yes, sir.
wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Probably familiar with that. I started reading
What's
it
the date on that?
cover to cover. It's 2000
No,
and
I mean the picture.
oh
Picture with the horse.
oh that's a good one. Oh yeah, I want to say 1908.
Yeah, I've got that same book, Jeremy. Same one.
Well, I started reading it cover to cover. I mean, I've looked in it before, but I've never read it cover to cover. So I'm on page 54, which happens to be English. And I'm surprised that Uncle John and Granddad, I'm surprised that Grandmother Flanigan's house isn't in this book because this book was published in 2008. So it was still certainly standing, but perhaps it wasn't unique
It
enough.
wasn't looking very healthy.
Well, no, but a lot of the entries in here aren't and don't, the pictures don't look great, but if they're if there are no other examples of that type of architecture that's still
Yeah.
standing in the area, then it can still be considered to be put on this survey. Now Uncle Paul's house is in the survey. There's not a picture of it, but it is listed. Not of great significance, but of some architectural significance for its type and being one of the few remaining of its type, at least as of 2008, in the area. I doubt since 2008 there have been editions of that type or many other types.
Probably not.
I'm sure
You
a
know,
few of us can
speaking,
still remember when occasional farmers drove buggies and horses and buggies into English to go shopping on Saturdays. Not very many, but a few.
that's right. That's right. And they parked their wagons in the area behind, across from the honky tonk, across the little river, across in that wide open spaces back there behind,
Okay.
and that's where they parked their horses and buggies. And I have a question to pose. My grandmother always went with my grandfather when he would buy feed at the feed store in English. Now, why did she go with him?
I know. I want to guess
Okay, go ahead.
because
Okay,
she wanted to pick the bags that the feed.
Yeah, that's it.
Pattern.
yep, yep. She would say, "Now, Lonnie, I want that bag and that bag," and it was real soft cloth. It wasn't you'd think a feed bag would be kind of rough, but it was real soft, and she'd launder them and then sew them with a Singer sewing machine, foot pedal, of course, into clothes, shirts, dresses, different things. She gave me 2 pair of underwear for my graduation from high school, made out of feed bags.
You still
If
have
you
them.
research it, you'll find that the feed bags were specifically understood to be reused as
Yeah,
clothing.
Oh, yeah, that was the point. That was a selling point for the feedback.
So they purposely made them out of good cloth.
I
anybody
I never
remember?
knew
Yeah,
any of that, including that they were soft. I always thought when I would hear this, well, wow, but rough burlap, and so it was a
Oh
market.
no, they were real cloth, and they were
Oh yeah.
attractive patterns like flower patterns and things like that. And I remember my grandfather missed his instructions from his sister about what one to get, and boy, she was not pleased.
So it was intentional marketing strategy then.
Exactly,
it was.
exactly.
It was.
Well, Vic, you could, if you still got them, you can put your underwear up for Antiques Roadshow for auction it off.
Probably could. Probably could.
Are you wearing them right now?
No, no, no. I haven't. I changed underwear 6 months ago.
Whether needed or not, huh?
Yeah.
I wonder how many of you remember that the stream that was behind all those buildings used to run right down parallel with East Fifth Street, pretty close to East Fifth Street. And it
Yeah.
was back in
Yeah.
the 30s that they dug that new path for it and isolated that parking area so that you could actually get to it from the 3764.
Don't remember that.
I've got a correction here to make. 1914 was the year of this photo.
1914.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
yeah. All right, I've got a question. Why was the business district in Marengo, Old Town Marengo, why was it built right there along that creek?
That's where the railroad was.
Was it navigable?
No, no.
Because it sure isn't now. And so Vic, do you have another idea as to why?
Well, if you look at English, there were 3 streams: Camp Fork, Brownstown, and the one that John's talking about ran parallel with East Fifth Street. I forget what that was called. Those 3 merged. And I don't know, the pioneers that first set up those towns, I think they weren't thinking. They set the towns up. Now, luckily, they put the cemetery on top of the hill, but the towns were usually located near a stream. And sometimes that was good news, but a lot of times it was bad news.
That's where the flat ground was.
Yeah, I was going to say that typically what paths for roads ran through the flat ground along the streams, probably, I'm guessing.
Probably true. Yeah.
So when do you think, well, anyone who knows the buildings that are still standing there, and I say still standing very tentatively, when do you think those buildings were built? Or when do you think the earliest one was built?
Oh, and Marengo?
Yeah.
I don't know. I would guess probably the late 1800s, early 1900s, but that's just a guess.
Well, that's what I figure. And so I thought that maybe they were placed there because of the railroad, because the railroad is right on the other side of that
Yeah.
stream. And the railroad would have come in around that time. But I don't know. Maybe there were structures there previously.
Now, the railroad made it through Marengo, English, in 1881. That's when they finally broke through the knobs. They built the longest tunnel in Indiana. It took several years to get through, but it's a long tunnel. I know when I hopped a freight train in New Albany and rode to Huntingburg, I didn't want to ride to Huntingburg, but is Gordon Husk on here?
No, I've not heard from him.
Well, Gordon and I and Ron Kissel. Now I understand Ron Kissel passed away just recently. I think that's correct. I hope not, but
That,
Yes, it
anyway,
is.
that's correct.
yeah.
In
Okay.
November.
November, yeah. We had gone to a Naval Reserve training meeting on Monday nights in Louisville. Every Monday night, that was during the Korean War. And on the way back, we were stopped at the railroad track in New Albany on Cordon Pike. And so, dummy me, I said, this train was going click, click, it's just barely moving. I said, I bet if we hopped that freight train, we could be in English before Arnie Vogelsong could drive his car to English. And Gordon said, I'll hop it if you will. And Ron said, I will too. So we all got out and we just hopped the freight train, rode through that tunnel. We thought the train would go real slow in English, but what we remembered was the old steam locomotives. They came through real slow because there was an upgrade coming through English. But this was a diesel. And then we flew through English. And there was Arnie at the railroad track waving to us. It was about 11 o'clock at night. We didn't know where we were going to end up, but Ron Kissel wanted to jump off. And I said, no, you're not going to jump off because, boy, you'd break legs, maybe kill yourself. So we wound up stopping in Huntingburg. We got out, hitchhiked back to English, and took us forever. Not much traffic in the 1950s. So finally we rode into English on the back of a pickup truck and got out. When we got out, our Ron Kissel's dad and my dad were in the same vehicle coming down the street. They had found out that we didn't come home that night, and they called Arnie Vogelsong, and Arnie said, well, Mr. Megenity, the last time we saw them, they were heading west on a freight train. so anyway, we laugh about that today.
Was my granddad part of that trip?
No, Mike I think Michael was in the car at the time. He didn't hop the freight train. He was too smart for that. But I think it was Arnie Vogelsong, Mike, Gordon, Ron Kissel, and me. I think there were 5, maybe 6 of us. I'm not sure. In those days, there were no bucket seats in the front. You could sit 3 people in the front, 3 people in the back of the cars. And one more thing, that they're building a new school in Jeffersonville, and they named it Pike School. And no one knows what the word pike means. And I want to know if any of you guys know what it means.
Pike?
We used to use it as a country road, the name for a country
Yeah.
road.
Right.
Well, That's what I used to use them for, but I found out the real name, the real reason for pike. John, do you know?
No,
Does it have to do with mining?
No.
No.
What is a pike? Think about that. What's a pike? In the old days, what was a pike?
It was a weapon.
Do you know, Melvin?
I thought it was a weapon, like a spear.
Yeah, it's a long pole that had a spear on the end of it. Okay. If you would go out Cordon Pike Road in New Albany, now, Melvin, you've heard of that one, I'm sure.
Yep.
Cordon Pike. If you'd go to the top of Edwardsville Hill in the pioneer days, this is back in the mid, even the late 1800s, you had to pay a toll. It was a toll road. So you'd come to the top of the hill, and there'd be a long pole across the road. It was a counterbalance pole. The back end of it, about 3 feet long, would weigh the same as the pole going across the road. So you paid your fee, 10 cents or whatever it was, and then what'd you do to the pike? You pushed on it, you turned it, didn't you?
Turnpike. Ah.
Turnpike.
Oh, wow.
That's
Okay.
where the name came from. The Pennsylvania Turnpike still uses that name. There were 2 roads that come near the new school they're building in Jeffersonville, and both of them were old turnpikes, shortened. They're still called pikes, and they named that school Pike, but nobody knows why.
My granddad, you used to live on Little River Turnpike. Did you hear, Granddad?
Yes, I hear.
You used to live on Little River Turnpike.
That's right. In Annandale.
Right.
Where was that located, Jeremy?
In Northern Virginia.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But I don't know its history.
Well, the early roads of Indiana, mostly southern Indiana, were private roads. People would buy up the right of ways, the land. They'd put what we call a ruddy road today, but anyway, you'd have to pay to go through it. It was a Paoli Turnpike if you went northwest to Paoli, Cordon Turnpike, and there were pikes all over southern Indiana. Now, northern Indiana, not so much, but we still got the Indiana Turnpike up in the far northern edge that goes all the way across northern Indiana.
Sure.
I don't know whether you pay to go across that today or not.
Yeah, you do. You do.
I think you do.
It goes right right through South Bend. So I know it well.
Yeah. Bob Roberts didn't join us today, did he?
No. I've not heard anything from him either.
So Vic, how did you guys get hooked onto that Naval Reserve thing? I know that your brothers both went into the Navy later, didn't they? And they got some advanced rank by having been in the Naval Reserve, didn't they?
They did. We went in as well. Heck, there were a lot of people from English. Mike, Vic, Ron Kissel, Arnie Vogelsong.
But how'd you guys get connected with it? See, I lived in New Albany and I never heard of that. I was not aware of that possibility.
Yeah, over on Southern Parkway in New Albany, there was a Naval Reserve Armory, and somebody told us, and there were 2 carloads of us every Monday for years that went to the Naval Reserve training office, and we would go on we would go on 2 weeks training duty every summer, and wasn't
there a recruiter there from Crawford County in that office?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't quite remember that.
I know when I graduated from high school, he got in contact with me and tried to get me a Naval ROTC scholarship. That didn't work out for me, but he was trying to do something good for me just because I was from Crawford County.
Yeah, really.
Granddad, Granddad, where did you go when you were in the Naval Reserves?
Great Lakes.
Great Lakes?
Great Lakes Training Center. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Michael.
Boot camp.
And where else did you go?
Huh?
Where else did you go?
Oh, I don't know.
Seems like you went to somewhere in the Caribbean.
We went to Cuba. Mike and Arnie Vogelsong and I think Ron Dembo. He was one of us. I think we went to Cuba, Havana, Cuba.
That's right.
And
yeah, we had a good time there, didn't we, Michael?
Yeah.
and I think San Diego. Didn't you go to San
The good
Diego?
old days.
Did you also go to San Diego?
I didn't. Maybe they
Yes,
did.
I went to San Diego. I can't remember what year.
I know I could type pretty well when I was joined the Naval Reserves, and they found out I was a pretty good typist. And when we went to training duty, when they found out I could type, they made me something like a secretary in one of the offices, and I didn't have to do a lot of the things that some of the other guys like Mike did. I saw a correspondence from Arnie Vogelsong. Now, Jeremy, you met Arnie before he passed away, didn't you?
Yeah, sure.
Anyway, Arnie wrote a letter to somebody and said, that damn Vic, he got a plush job up here at Great Lakes while we're out here doing push-ups.
Well, so my granddad didn't use his typing skills there.
No, I don't think so.
What?
Gordon's not on the hookup here this evening, but I visited the memorial in English. You've seen it probably, haven't you, Jeremy, where they've got the cannon and the
Sure,
Veterans
yeah.
Memorial right along the highway.
Yeah.
And there's bricks.
Mm-hmm.
And I found one for Gordon Husk last year, and it had places of well, it was battle sites and things like that. He put Cuba down there. He had gone to Cuba, and that was kind of a place of a battle site that he went to. Well, heck, we were down there on vacation on training duty, but he put Cuba down.
Well, the idea with those bricks is that people are still supposed to be able to get them if they haven't ordered one, but I haven't heard of anyone doing that, and I don't know, what would be involved, but if you know of anyone who ought to have a brick and doesn't, I could look into helping make that happen.
Yeah, that's a good way to raise money. I wonder how much the bricks cost. A couple $100?
I don't think so. It seems like they were $50, but I could be misremembering. But that was also 10 years ago or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
And
got something to read from this week's Clarion. 120. Make sure you listen to this, Granddad and Uncle John. 125 years ago, so in 1900, it says
I barely remember.
Wait a minute. No, this is 100 years ago. No, I don't expect you to remember. This one is 100 years ago, 1925. W.D. Thornberry of English was one of 16 members of the graduating class at Indiana University elected to the Phi Beta Kappa.
Whoa. Now that was John's grandfather?
Uncle Bill.
That was your
Granddad.
uncle.
That was my
Granddad,
mother's brother.
Okay.
Granddad you used to be very impressed with Phi Beta Kappa.
With what, Phi Beta Kappa?
Yeah.
I
Who?
remember that vaguely.
Yeah. Well, I just read from the Clarion that 100 years ago in 1925, W.D. Thornberry of English was one of 16 members of the graduating class at Indiana University elected to the Phi Beta Kappa.
I don't remember that.
Oh, I don't either, Mike.
And he proudly wore his Phi Beta Kappa pin on his lapel.
Did he really? Now,
Yeah.
John, is that the Phi Beta? I mean, is that the Thornberry farm out west of English? Did
Yes.
they have a house out there?
Yes.
Okay, and a stone down on the little road that had the name engraved in the stone, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, although the house is no longer there, it's been replaced with a manufactured home.
Yep. Yep. You know, speaking of earthquakes, one of the biggest earthquakes to ever hit North America was the New Madrid earthquake. Have you heard of that, Jeremy?
It doesn't ring a bell.
Oh
Mississippi River.
boy.
Near St. Louis, right?
It was near the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi River, but it ran the river backwards for miles and miles and miles. 1813, I believe, was the year. So there were no real big cities along the river at all. But it was one of the worst earthquakes ever. It uprooted, it broke down cliffs, and if there'd been like today, if that earthquake would ever happen again, there'd be hundreds, if not thousands, of people that would be killed in that kind of an earthquake.
More accurately, you might say when it happens again.
Yeah,
That's right. When it happens again. Yeah. Of course, the earthquakes around here build up a lot of pressure. They don't give way as often as they do out in California. They release the pressure every 3 or 4 years. You've got an earthquake in California. Right, Melvin?
The little ones don't count. The big
No,
ones would
little-
have been in 74 and 94 or something like that.
Well, 90,
What time?
94 was San Francisco, was Bay Area, wasn't it?
There was 87 was the Bay Area.
87. Okay.
Yeah, if you live in California, you got to be aware of mudslides, fires, earthquakes. It's pretty precarious to live in certain parts of California.
And you got
But someday,
to be aware of what's in your bank account too.
brother, is your home insurance a lot higher now, Melvin, over the last
course.
few years?
Oh,
Of
absolutely.
course.
Yeah.
And it's
And
impacted our home.
we carry separate earthquake insurance also.
Oh boy.
Well, we've got just under 2 minutes left.
Well, oh, Jeremy, I wanted to ask you about the mill in English. Are they doing anything with the mill in English?